it's like, well, yeah, we do Scrum here. It's like, well, okay, excellent. Let's see your product backlog. Oh, well, we don't really have a product backlog. It's like, oh, okay. Can I attend your daily Scrum? It's like, well, we do that every couple of days.
So the main question is, are you the person to blame for all the exams that have been failed by students, me included, multiple times?
Can I share this? Oh, what the heck, I'll share this anyways. We partnered with a gentleman by the name of Dan Bacanti. Dan's gonna hate me for talking about this, but.
Joining me today is Steve Porter from Canada. He is professional serious manager and professional Scrum trainer at scrum.org. Welcome, Steve. Nice to have you here.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate your invitation.
So the main question is, are you the person to blame for all the exams that have been failed by students, me included, multiple times? Are you the one?
Yeah, maybe. I've certainly had a hand in trying to make the assessment questions better. One of the positions I have is to help connect up our trainer community. We've got 340 trainers, more than that, around the world. And one of my jobs is to help connect that trainer community up with the staff at scrum.org who help decide what courses we're going to do, manage the assessments, those sort of things. Because one of the things I've learned is, and this is kind of an agile thing, right? Having a single person provide you an answer or a knowledge isn't as valuable as having a group of people. This is why we have Scrum teams, right? Getting a group of people, cross-functional, different perspectives on items. And then when you do that, you get better results. So for the assessments, they were initially created by, I'm going to say, a relatively small group of people. I think some of the original ones were probably Ken Schwaber himself working with a small number of staff. And maybe a handful of other professionals to get those questions. One of the things that I've helped over time is to get those questions in front of other people to get their opinion on them, to see if we can improve them. One of the great experiences that I get to have on a fairly regular basis is we have these things called face-to-faces at scrum.org where the trainers get together. They're like little mini conferences for trainers only. And one of the events we have there is, the title of it is the most difficult assessment questions. It's an open space session where we invite a whole bunch of trainers and we go over the questions that students struggle with to see if we can make them better. And when I started doing that, we had some questions that were, I want to say bad, but that's not a good word for it. But we had questions that could certainly be improved. And one of the things we learned when we got them in front of our trainers, because our trainers come from all over the world and they have different languages and different cultures, that a question that makes perfect sense to an English-speaking Canadian, and I will say a unilingual English-speaking Canadian, I don't speak any other languages. I'll look at a question and I'll read it and go, oh yeah, that just makes total sense. I'll put that same question in front of someone whose first language is Dutch, or first language is Russian, or first language is French. And they'll say, well, that word is troublesome. That phrase doesn't translate well. This concept doesn't work really well here. And over a period of time, with the help of our trainer community, the questions got better. In some cases, they got harder because we had questions where the feedback from the trainers was, this is too easy. This is not going to teach our students anything. So let's take this answer out. Let's put this answer in to make it a little bit more challenging. Or in some cases, it's like, this is just a bad question. Let's just get rid of this question and replace it. We're constantly refining the questions as we're going through. That was a very long answer. I hope I hit some of it. So shorter answer is, yeah, if you're struggling with some of the questions, I'm partially responsible for that because it's part of my job to make sure the questions are good. It's not just my job, though. We have all sorts of people who contribute to make sure the questions are tough but fair.
Yeah, that makes sense, as the exams usually have a very high passing bar, and for a reason, because the certification themselves has to mean something and support the fact that you know your subject up to the level needed, of course. So accept the feedback from professional Scrum trainers and Scrum.org stuff. What are other ways to submit your feedback, let's say for regular students who have struggles or challenges with some questions or exams? How can they make sure their voice is heard?
A lot of students will email support directly, so support@scrum.org with challenges, and we read every single one of those. The forums, you have to be a little careful on our forums because we don't want people posting questions there, but asking general topics is a way that sometimes the questions can be improved, or if the questions can't be improved, your understanding of why you're struggling with that question can sometimes be improved by having conversations on the forum. LinkedIn's another spot where people can talk about hey, I read this question, I'm not sure I got it right. What do people think about it? And talk generally about the topics around them. One of the things that I hope people who take our assessments, one of the ways they view our assessments is not only do they validate what you know, and they do, and that's why we want them to be tough but fair. We want you to feel really good after you pass that assessment, like you've achieved something. And in most cases, you do feel really good when you pass because they're not easy. One of the other things we hope our assessment takers get from the assessments is they learn something from them. I tell all of my students when they take the assessments, and for your listeners, just to be aware, if one of the things I love about Scrum.org is we decoupled the certification and the assessment from class taking. This has always been a really important thing for us. Just taking a class doesn't prove anything, right? You could sleep through the entire class. It doesn't, having that assessment afterwards that says, no, you actually learned what we want you to learn in the class is really important. And then having the assessment be separate from the training, that if you've learned all of these concepts somewhere outside of class, then just go take the assessment. The one thing about our assessments though, is if you do take it outside the class, you pay a fee, you take the assessment. If you pass, excellent, go celebrate. If you don't pass, you can take it again, but you have to pay for it again. With our classes, we take a slightly different approach on that. We really want to encourage learning. That's one of the reasons we have classes. So with our classes, if you take a class and take the assessment, which is included in the class, and you take it relatively quickly, like and with us, it's within 14 days. So you sit a class, you've learned something in the class, you also bring your own personal experiences you've learned, you'll take the assessment, you'll learn something from the assessment. And not only will you learn whether you passed or failed or not, right? Because that's a very simple learning, right? 85% pass fail. But what you'll also learn in a lot of cases are the things that you don't know. I don't know how it was like when you took your assessment, but there were, I take all of our assessments. I don't have any special access to our new assessments. I will, when we create a new assessment, I like to take it just like a teacher, or sorry, just like a student. I'll be taking it and there'll be some questions like, oh yeah, I got this one. Oh yeah, I know this one. Oh yeah, I got this one. Oh, this one's obvious. And then I'll get those occasional questions where like, I don't know if you had experiences like that, where you'll read the question, you'll read the answers, and you're like, uh-oh, I don't know what the answer to this is. Or I'm not really confident in the answer in this. And it's like, I think it's this one. I don't know, did you have any of those experiences when you were taking them?
Yeah, I can remember a few, but it's not in a way that I don't know which answer is the right one, because most of the time when we're speaking about multiple choice questions, this is right one, and this is even more right, and this is probably one. No. This is exactly exactly what's needed, because you have to be crisp and clear with the language you use and the answers you give. So that is probably the most challenging thing.
Yeah, and those questions where when someone reads them, they look, it's like, well, these are both right, but I have to pick one. the type of questions where it's easy to identify the wrong answers, but then you're left with two or three right answers. And then it's up to you, based on your experience and your additional knowledge, to figure out which is the better of the right answers, because that's often what we're looking for. And that is reflective of the real world. You're going to have lots of choices you're going to have to make, and it's up to you and your experience and then the context of the question that's in, the context that you're in, to figure out what's the best approach to start off with. So those are the questions that I'm glad that you've discovered that those ones are challenging, because they could be challenging. And then what I hope you do and our students do is then they go and learn more about whatever that particular topic was, to see if they can get additional information to help them answer that question. So this idea that you learn something from assessments is really important for us. And then in our classes, if you take our class, you take the assessment within 14 days, you get to take it again for free if for whatever reason you're unable to pass. And I really like this idea of show up for a class. You'll learn something in the class, obviously. You bring to the class your own experience, and then very quickly validate what you've learned, and also learn what you don't know. And the assessments will be really good at that, because not only will we help point out the areas that you didn't score well in, and they are a little general, but they're still specific enough that you can go and dig in more in those areas. But as a test taker, you know which questions you're solid on, and you also know which questions you're not so solid on. So great, go learn some more, and then take the assessment again once you've had a chance to study a bit more. Maybe go talk to someone about some of the questions that you have. I know a lot of our instructors will work with their students afterwards if they've got questions about the assessments. And then hopefully on the second attempt, you'll score better. And you'll probably still learn something, which is okay.
Feedbacks that you have for level 1 and level 2 assessments might seem general, but still they give you enough direction to areas to pursue and learn again. But with PSM3 and PSPO3, as it's feedback provided by a real human who was reading through what you've come up with in your essays, it's extremely specific, and probably it's the most valuable feedback I have received through my entire history of taking any exams, starting with the high school and moving forward. So this is really good.
Yeah, those assessments, I spent a lot of time grading those assessments after obviously I passed them myself. One of the things I like about our PSD community is we all right now generally follow the same path to become a PST. Even PSTs back from way back when, like myself, we had to sit assessments, we had to attend classes. So I had to take the PSM3. Back then it was the PSM2, because we had the level 1 and then the written assessment. We now added a level 2 assessment in the middle there, still multiple choice, but I had to sit it as you did. And my experience for sitting it, I don't know what yours was like, but mine was not fun. I did not enjoy it. I was under a lot of time pressure. It was really stressful, but at the same time, I really appreciated passing and the feedback that I had. I don't know what your experience is like, but here was my experience. It's a 2-hour time box. You got 120 minutes. I think I might have been doing it in a hotel room. I was a consultant at the time, so traveling around a lot. So I was in a hotel room. Internet's a little spotty, but it was still pretty good. So I started taking the assessment, and I'm kind of moving through it fairly well, fairly quickly. And then I want to say about halfway through. I think it was 36 questions at the time. So I'm maybe, got 20 some odd questions done. And I look up the clock and I've got half an hour left. And I'm like, okay, hang on a second. I'm 3/4 of the way through my time, but I'm only halfway through the questions. Oh, the sense of panic and fear that I suddenly tripped. It's like, oh my God, I gotta get this done. So I just started banging out questions as fast as I could. And these are long answer questions. They're essay-based questions. So you have to read them and then you've got to figure out what you're going to type. And I just started rushing through. And fortunately for me, it's a mix of multiple choice and essay questions. And fortunately for me, the last 4 or 5 questions were all multiple choice. So I was able to complete it in time, but it was only because the last few questions were all multiple choice. I didn't have to come up with essay-based questions. As a person who grades them, one of the bits of advice I give to people who are looking to take it is do a really good job of time management, because obviously I didn't, but it is advice that I give people. So I've even suggested having someone who's not you keep time for you. If you've got a spouse or a partner or something, have them come into the room every 30 minutes and say, hey, you're 30 minutes in, like, how you doing? Oh, hey, you're an hour in, how you doing? To help keep on track of the questions. Because the last thing you want to do is to not answer a couple of them. If you leave 1 or 2 essay-based questions blank, you get 0, and passing when you get 0 on a couple of questions is almost impossible. So you want to make sure that you do answer every question. One of the interesting things I learned from grading it is you can tell when you're grading, you get a sense for the time pressure that people are under. The first couple of questions, they'll be long, they'll go into a lot of detail, there'll be lots of words in it.
And the last one is 1 sentence, which is absolutely answering the question. It's extremely precise. It has a couple of spelling mistakes and is missing a dot.
And the answers get shorter and shorter and shorter, and the spelling gets worse and the grammar gets worse, and they start using acronyms for everything. And one thing I did learn is sometimes when the answers got shorter, they got better, because they were very focused on what am I trying to answer here? What's the key thing I'm trying to answer here? And one of the things that I like about Scrum is this idea of constraints and time boxes. That's why we have a sprint, right? When you have a sprint, it forces you to focus on the most important thing. And the constraints you have for these assessments do get you to focus on, okay, I've got like a minute to answer this. What's the most important thing I can put in? When you think you've got 2 hours to answer something, you tend to bounce around all over the place, and the answers aren't quite as good and they're not quite as focused. So I do remind test takers to really focus on, what is this question asking me? What's the most important thing that I could include? Because there's nothing worse than if you do have a constraint and there's a question asking you something very specific, you waste your time talking about all this unrelated stuff. There's value in being concise. When you are trying to convey information to someone, the more you say, the more chances you have for people to misunderstand what you're saying. And again, it's that idea of constraints that are really important. So there's a great quote, and I'm going to butcher it, but something along the lines, if I had more time, I would write you a shorter letter. Because it's often very easy to just go on and on and on and on. It's a skill to be able to distill things down to being very concise. And it's something that I would suggest your listeners, they work on that. Trainers are, at the end of the day, trainers are public speakers. One of the things we look for in our trainers, and one of the things you should look for anytime you're doing public speaking, is conciseness. Your audience has only so much attention. They only have so much time. So focus on what's important for them and deliver it as quickly as possible.
If I'm not mistaken, there was a story about Winston Churchill being asked to make a speech in front of some university students, and he asked, well, how long does the speech have to be? And they replied, 15 minutes. So I will need about 2 months to come up with a good speech. How about a 30-minute? Well, I need a month. How about 2 hour speech? Well, I can do it right now. Let's go. So kind of conveys the argument. One of the last questions I was willing to ask before we got on the path of exams and exploration. Any mathematical models being used, or have you ever considered using any mathematical models for studying how effective the specific questions are? Because you have thousands of students coming in who are passing the tests, and you have solid empirical data, and maybe for large numbers like this, you could come up with something that will show you, hey, this question is never being answered, or this question is being answered by 100% of the students, so maybe it's not serving its purpose fully.
Yeah. We absolutely look at the data, and what you described is exactly what we look at. If we have a question where a large percentage of our students are not answering it correctly, we look at those questions and we figure out why is that? And often we've, at those sessions I talked about where we get other PSTs involved, we will identify, it's like, well, that word there is probably what's tripping people up, because we see which of the wrong answers people are selecting. And we will look, it's like, why are people selecting that wrong answer? Is there something in the question or something in the answer, some word they're using? And we very well might make adjustments if we think it's going to make for a better question. The one thing we have done on I'll say many occasions is we have questions that students are scoring poorly in, and we have numbers. There are numbers that we look for. So if half of the students are getting it wrong, that's, why is that? But we have had questions where a low number of students are getting it right, and we leave the question in because what we've decided, it's a really good question, and it's something that a lot of people have a misunderstanding about Scrum, and this question catches that misunderstanding about Scrum. One of the reasons the assessment was created in the first place was Scrum had been out in the marketplace. Scrum had been being used for many, many years. And I can only talk of Ken. Ken and Jeff both own the Scrum Guide, but my working has been most directly with Ken. So I'm going to talk about Ken more than Jeff. And Ken was really unhappy that all of these people seem to not know what Scrum is. In his head, it's really simple, but you had all of these people had all of these misconceptions around it. So the assessment asked a lot of questions around those misconceptions. And people still have some of those misconceptions, and some of the questions will ask questions around those misconceptions, and people will get them wrong, and they should. And one of the things that we hope is when people pass and get 85%, and when you're getting 85%, like getting 1 or 2 questions wrong, you're still going to pass. So if you get these questions that are, and I'm going to use air quotes here, are really difficult, you're not going to fail because you've got one difficult question, you got it wrong, right? You're going to fail because you've got lots of different questions wrong. But we want to make sure that when people pass that assessment, they know what they're talking about. So when they're back in their organizations and they're implementing Scrum, that they're not implementing a whole bunch of misconceptions and doing things the wrong way. So those having hard questions that we've looked at the numbers, and the numbers are telling us that this question is one that a majority of our students aren't getting right. In some cases, that's going to be okay.
One more thing to ask in this area, what do you think is the best tailored Scrum.org exam that exists there? And what is the worst?
They're all good. Like I have to be careful, they're all good. The one that we probably have the most experience with is the PSM-1. The PSM-1 has been around for a long period of time. Lots of people have taken it. The questions have been honed, and it's a hard assessment, but it's a good hard assessment. I had, can I share this? Oh, what the heck, I'll share this anyways. We partnered with a gentleman by the name of Dan Vacanti. Dan's gonna hate me for talking about this, but we partnered with Daniel Vacanti, who is an expert in Kanban. And was one of the original practitioners of Kanban, and we partnered with him to bring some of his knowledge to Scrum practitioners, which I played a role in that, and it was great. And Dan's a super smart guy, super smart. Kanban was his focus, and he wasn't one of those Kanban practitioners that hated Scrum. I like Kanban better. And once we started working with him and he read the Scrum guide, he's like, the Scrum guide's just common sense. Like it was delightful working with him compared to some other people in the Kanban community who are a bit more adversarial. One of the things that we asked Dan to do was pass the PSM-1. If he's going to be working with us, he needs to understand Scrum. So he took the assessment, and I don't think did he get 100%? He got a very high grade. He might, no, I don't think he got 100%. He got a very high grade because he studied, he took it seriously and read through all of the material that we suggest that you do. Certainly read through the Scrum guide. He talked a lot to other PSTs and other practitioners as well. And I remember when he finished that assessment and got back to me with his score, and it was a passing score. It was a good score. He went, "This is really hard," and it was really good. So the PSM-1 is, I think, is our assessment that has probably gone through the most revisions, in that answering 80 questions in 60 minutes, you need to know your stuff. You can't be looking up stuff in Google. You have to just know it. And that one is why I like that one. I think that is the one that I would say is our best. The one I dislike the most, like you had yours, is the PAL assessment. And for similar reasons. The leadership role that the PAL is covering is one that I don't have a lot of experience with. I've never been a CIO or a C-level executive. I've worked a little bit with them in my time as a consultant, but I certainly haven't held the position. I spend most of my time working with teams. So the PAL assessment, I think the first time I took it, I failed. I think the second time I took it, I got like just 86 or something, just barely a passing grade. A lot of it is because I just don't have that mindset and don't have that experience. So I should struggle with it. I should not just pass it easily. And that's kind of what I like about our assessments. They're fair. If you know your stuff, you'll pass. If you don't know your stuff, you're going to struggle. My very first attempt at the essay-based PSPO assessment, so it used to be PSPO2, it's now PSPO3. I wanted to teach product ownership. So to teach product ownership, to teach our product owner course as a trainer, I needed to go attend a class, and then I needed to pass all the assessments. I failed the first time and got feedback. And at this point, the feedback came from Ken directly. And he basically said, yeah, you're not ready to teach this course. You don't have the product owner mindset. You're thinking like a Scrum Master. You're thinking like a developer. You're not thinking like a product owner when you're answering these questions. So I don't want you teaching this class, which hurt. I thought I was a smart guy. And to have someone like Ken say, yeah, you're not as smart as you think you are, was not great. But it challenged me to go learn more. I actually spent some time as a product owner. And did I learn a lot. Being an agile coach, or being a Scrum Master, or being on a development team, you think you know a lot about product ownership, but then go actually be a product owner. Oh my God, what an experience that you have. And even when I was a product owner, there were pieces that I'm still learning, like some of the marketing pieces, sales and marketing. I'm still a little, not as strong as I'd like to be. Budgeting obviously is a big part of being a product owner. And I know we've got lots of product owners out there. They're certainly good product owners, but they may not appreciate, to be an awesome product owner, all the different things you need to know. It's not just about writing user stories and attending sprint reviews and ordering product backlogs. It's a lot more than just that. And our higher level assessments cover that.
So sure. I'll tell you when I first learned that Steve Porter exists. It was 6 years ago when I was asked to prepare a short presentation about scaled Scrum efforts and different frameworks that exist on the market and what should be there. And obviously I knew about SAFe because it was immensely popular even back then. I have also studied less and had a bit of experience implementing it during the agile transformation, but I was looking for more to give some examples to people who will be listening. And I found a video of you explaining what a Nexus framework is to some guy in Amsterdam, and it was happening in an old building near the river. And to my best effort, I wasn't able to find this video because I wanted to revisit it again just before this conversation started, but I couldn't Google it, I couldn't find it anywhere. So then you with much fewer gray hairs were explaining that it's basically easy. It's like Scrum within Scrum, and instead of wanting, you have 3 to 9, and here is Nexus, and here is it. So this was the first time I've seen that Steve Porter exists and the Nexus framework exists. So if you could tell a bit about how did Nexus appear? What are the origins of the framework development? How involved were you in the process back in the day?
Oh, okay, sure, thanks. I had that video. I think it was Adam Kogan, who was a PST out of Australia, who shot that video, and it was London of all places. Actually, in the background, it was an old building right in the heart of London, I think a block from Tower Bridge. Very cool location. It was 7 years ago. It was a decent amount of time. SAFe was already in the marketplace, getting a lot of interest. Our PST community was struggling a bit because they understood Scrum, had experience working in environments where you had multiple Scrum teams working on the same product, and they were bumping into this SAFe thing and struggling a bit because SAFe's description, this was very early days of SAFe's description of agile practices, there were some things in there that as a PST just felt weird. In early days of SAFe, having potentially releasable increments at the end of every 2-week sprint was encouraged, but not mandatory. Sprints had to be 2 weeks long. At the end of every program increment, there was a hardening sprint at the end, or a hardening iteration. And a lot of agile practitioners, PSTs, were like, a lot of companies are buying this, and there's a lot of things in here that are bad that actually don't go well together with Scrum, but I've got nothing to give them other than Scrum. And they're looking, and the companies, the organizations they're working with need more. And
pardon for interrupting you, but I remember there was a website called SAFe is not Scrum at some point where someone put out the direct quotes from the SAFe description that they have on their website for the enterprise version that is written black on white, and the quotes from the Scrum guide that should correspond to the same part, but they actually don't. And there were quite a few, about 15 different things that Scrum says it has to be done this way, and in SAFe, it is actually meant to be working differently, although the framework was sold as, we are based on Scrum. It's just scaled to support the enterprises who are having many people working on the same stuff.
Yeah, and that SAFe has gotten better over the years. They're iterative, and I appreciate them for doing that. They take feedback. I've been fortunate enough to be able to give direct feedback to the people who work on the framework. This might surprise a lot of people, but I took the 5-day SAFe, is it SPC course? I took it in Denver with Dean Leffingwell as a trainer. It was a great experience. I learned lots because SAFe covers a lot of stuff that Scrum doesn't. Portfolio management, they have a lot of really interesting stuff in there, and they've improved it over time. I do wish, even now, I find things in there that when you compare them to what the Scrum Guide, the practices in the Scrum Guide, the framework, there seems to be some conflict in there. And in a lot of organizations, SAFe works fine, and SAFe's description of Scrum works fine. I'm not gonna knock it. I just wish that if they were going to recommend practices that kind of go against Scrum, that they would have found another way to describe what their teams are doing and not call it Scrum, because then it's confusing. And I do this all the time when I'm talking to students or I'm working with people. I think Scrum's great. Will it solve everyone's problems? No. Are there some spots where Scrum's not going to work? Absolutely. It is not a silver bullet. Are there things that are better than Scrum? Are there companies out there that are doing incredibly awesome things and not doing Scrum? Absolutely. I just recommend for people who are doing things that aren't Scrum to find other words to describe what they're using, because it's confusing if it's like, well, yeah, we do Scrum here. It's like, well, okay, excellent. Let's see your product backlog. Oh, well, we don't really have a product backlog. It's like, oh, okay. Can I attend your daily Scrum? It's like, well, we do that every couple of days. Oh, okay. Well, where's your Scrum Master? Well, we don't actually have a Scrum Master. And they'll talk about all of these things they're not doing, and it's working great for them. And I'm like, that's really good. But you can imagine it's confusing if someone came and joined your company, you told them you're doing Scrum, and they went to go attend the daily Scrum, and it's, oh yeah, no, we'd only do that every couple of days. It would confuse them. So the words matter. So find your own words for it. And with SAFe, that was one of the struggles that we were having 6 years ago, is you had these big organizations who want help with agility and scaling, and they didn't know what to do. So they went and did SAFe, and SAFe's got these Scrum teams, and they've got some guidance around the Scrum teams. And the guidance was confusing because they were doing stuff that didn't match what the Scrum Guide was. And our professional Scrum trainers would go into those organizations and try to teach people about Scrum, and there'd be some confusion here. It's like, well, hang on, you're saying this, and SAFe is saying this. What the heck? What Scrum.org wanted to do was to give people an alternative. And I won't even say an alternative. What we wanted to do is to provide people some guidance. Like, if you're in an environment where you've got multiple teams working on the same product, because the Scrum Guide really is just about one team, one product. That's the heart of the Scrum Guide. So if you had a product that for whatever reason you needed more than one team, well, how do you handle that? What would you do? And you could just say, well, just do Scrum. But it's not that easy. And that's one of the reasons SAFe came out, is it's really not that easy. There's additional help that you can get. And all the Nexus framework was getting together some, use the term best practices, but just here are some techniques, here are some ideas, here are some things that you should consider doing if you're in a scaled environment. One of the things I love about the Nexus is how simple it is. And when you describe it to people, they're like, oh, this is just common sense. It's like, yeah, it is. And that's good. That's hopefully means that it's the bare minimum that you need when you've got to potentially coordinate all of these various people outside of a single Scrum team trying to create a product. One of the things that we did when we were looking at kind of what's the bare minimum you need is we did look at SAFe, we looked at LESS, we looked at DAD, Disciplined Agile Delivery, we looked at the Spotify model, we looked at all of these various things, and it's like, what's the bare minimum? And that's what we hope we captured with the Nexus, is what's the bare minimum. LESS, I love LESS, love the Craig and Bass are awesome. I really like LESS. The main difference I find, and I'm not a LESS expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I find LESS is Scrum, and then they provide some additional guidance. They're a little bit more prescriptive than the Nexus is. You have to have feature teams, right? There's some There's some additional things that they suggest that you do that are part of the less approach. In Nexus, we take a little bit more of a simple stripped down view. It's like, here's the bare minimum you need. You have more understanding of less. How would you compare less and Nexus?
I would say that indeed less is more prescriptive, and especially with the latest changes to the Scrum Guide, where the Scrum Guide became even less prescriptive than it was before, and there is more freedom involved. It feels like Nexus is some sort of logical continuation of the Scrum framework. And if you want something to inherit the best qualities, you have to just replicate them. And you can't make Nexus prescriptive, 50 pages long, and make Nexus Guide explicit for all the cases that might happen. Again, it feels that whatever framework you're using on the one team level, like Scrum or Kanban, or if you are in a scaled environment, whether you're using Safe or Less or Nexus or DAD or something else, it's the same as using specific tool to solve a problem. Like, you wouldn't be hammering a nail with a screwdriver because, I don't know, it's fancy, it's in the market, or someone has advertised it to you. You know, you have a specific problem and you have to try different approaches to see which one works better. But in this case, it's kind of easy when we speak with Scrum and about Kanban, because you can just, okay, let's try Scrum for 2, 3, 4 sprints, see how it goes. If not, we can get back to Kanban. But if you are going through the agile transformation and you have few thousands of people working in different countries, you cannot just juggle like with that level of ease, and everything will cost you and there will be consequences. So you have to make your shot the best you can make it. Yeah, it's hard. It's really hard.
It is. One of the things when I'm talking to organizations who have scaling issues, one of the first questions I always ask is, why do you need all these people? Why have you got all these people? Can you get away with less people? Because if you can get away with less people, then you've got less challenges. The term we use in the class, and I think it might even be in the next guy's, the idea of descaling to solve your problems. One of the classic white papers around agility was the Sentinel Project. FBI, your readers, if they haven't read about the Sentinel Project, they should go read about it, because it was a classic example of descaling, where you had hundreds of people trying to deliver a system and just failing repeatedly. And when they had less people tackle the problem, they were more successful. And when I'm working with organizations who are like, hey, we've got all these people, you know, and we're struggling with coordination and they can't seem to get together and produce an increment, it's like, okay, well, how can we make this smaller? One of the things I love about Less is they do seem to focus on the Scrum team, feature teams, right? That's a way of, to a certain degree, descaling, because each team then has a lot more independence to be able to deliver value, and you don't have to worry about the coordination cost across multiple teams. And any opportunities that organizations that are dealing with scaling, any opportunities you can have to descale, to have less coordination between people and teams, the more likely you'll be successful, which is sometimes hard, because sometimes it's an acknowledgement that maybe we've grown too big. And that's a hard thing for people to hear, is maybe they've grown too big and they need to focus. They need to think about doing less. But sometimes if you slow down, you'll go faster.
There is the Nexus guide, which exists. It has seen some revisions. Could you shed some light on how this is being done? Because it's not Scrum guide, it's not as popular, and fewer people are involved. What is the mechanism for changes? And like, there is the Scrum user voice where you can suggest your improvements or changes to the existing Scrum guide? Is there something like this for Nexus guide? Are there any plans that you have heard of maybe to make an update to that?
I haven't heard any plans to introduce a user voice specifically around Nexus. There are, and I could be wrong about this. Your listeners will correct me if that's the case. On the Nexus page at scrum.org, I believe we invite comments for people via email. What happens is there is a collection of scrum.org staff plus PSTs plus other people in the industry who are dealing with scaling, who get together when required to look at updates. You want to make sure you're not making changes in isolation. Nexus Guide isn't owned by a single person who makes all the changes. There's a group of people who work on it, and then they present it out to the public and then get feedback on it. And you're right, it is not as popular as the Scrum Guide, so the feedback we get is less. It still does get improved over time based on what our professional Scrum trainers are hearing as they teach courses, which for a lot of our trainers is a relatively small amount of work they do. Most of our trainers are full-time coaches and consultants or have full-time jobs in organizations, and they learn things about scaling and how organizations are dealing with problems and how the Nexus can help, may help, and take those ideas and make it better.
So if I'm someone in a management position in an organization, there are some reasons, I believe, to pursue the scaled effort. And what would those reasons normally be?
If you're looking to solve a scaling challenge, again, my first response is, can you scope things down to less people, less work, so you're not dealing with scaling? I'm gonna try something with your listeners. This is something I would normally draw on a whiteboard, but I'll see if I can talk people through it to help them appreciate this. So imagine a quadrant, right? You've got a diagram with 4 quadrants. You've got 2 axes. On one axis, you've got number of teams. And it would go from 1 team on let's say the left-hand side to more than 1 team on the right-hand side. So that would be the x-axis. On the y-axis, the up-down axis, you've got number of products, right? At the bottom, you've got 1 product. At the top, you've got more than 1 product. So you've got 4 quadrants. 1 quadrant, 1 team, 1 product. That would be the lower left-hand one. Lower right-hand side would be 1 product, multiple teams. And as you go up, you've got the quadrant in the upper right-hand corner would be 1 product, multiple teams, right? And then in the far corner, you've got multiple teams, multiple products. You've got these 4 quadrants. 1 product, 1 team is easy, do Scrum. If you've got 1 team, multiple products, right? So you've got a single team trying to manage multiple products, that's just messy. Like that is, I don't know if any of your listeners have actually worked in that environment where I've got a single team, but I've got to juggle all of these products that we're working on. It's really hard to get anything done because you've got all these competing interests that you're working on. So if you're in an organization and they're looking for help on scaling, and I've got 1 team and multiple products, my response to always that is just focus. Like get your teams to, on every sprint, focus on a single product. The focus will allow you to get more actually delivered, get more actually done. Multitasking is a killer. So juggling multiple products by a single team in a single sprint is tough. So a little bit of focus, you can move that 1 team, multiple products down into that nice little quadrant where you've got a single team and single products. If you've got multiple teams, multiple products, that would be the upper right-hand quadrant. That's portfolio management. really. So I've got all of these teams that I need to work with. And I've got all of these products that I need to work with. How am I going to manage those? How am I going to juggle those? Safe's actually got some pretty decent guidance. If you're looking for help on portfolio management, Safe's actually got some pretty good ideas. A portfolio Kanban, which basically limits the number of initiatives that you have going at any one time. And I would suggest if you can limit the number of initiatives and take the single products and marry them to single teams, again, you can shift down to that lower left-hand quadrant where you've got a single team, single product. Scrum works really well there. Now, in the upper left-hand quadrant, that's where you've got multiple teams, single product. You've got a big product. You've got a big product for whatever reason. One team is not going to give you the ability to deliver as much value on this product as you possibly can. So you've got multiple teams working on that. This is where the Nexus guide can come into play. I will say if you're, for whatever reason, able to slice the product up in such a way where every single team can focus on a feature or focus on their particular piece of work and decouple any dependencies across the multiple teams, then you're back into that great quadrant in the lower left-hand corner where you've got single team, single product, and Scrum works really, really well. So back to the original question. It was a long diatribe there. So company comes looking for help on scaling. I figure out which quadrant they're in, right? That's the first question. If you got a whole bunch of products in one team, okay, if you need really help there, then just get them to focus on a single product at once. If you've got multiple products, multiple teams, a little bit of portfolio management, and there's lots of different ways you can do that, but allowing single teams to focus on single products for short periods of time, 1 or 2 or 3 sprints, whatever the case may be, can be really great. If you've got a single product, multiple teams, Nexus is good. And why Nexus? For me, it's about simplicity. You're going to be dealing with a ton of complexity when you've got a single product and multiple teams building into that and trying to deliver working, functioning software on a regular cadence, trying to coordinate 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 people. There's going to be a ton of complexity from that. Because of that, your processes should be as simple as possible. Having a really complex process, trying to manage really complex work, you'll find you're going to struggle. Whereas if you've got really complex processes, really complex problems, simple processes is what you need. That's the great thing about Scrum. Scrum's meant to deal with complex work where there's lots of moving parts, lots of unknowns. You're not sure what the customer wants. You're not sure what your people can build. You're learning as you go along. So let's have a really simple process to manage that. Scrum Guide's 13 pages long, really simple. Nexus Guide probably isn't that much bigger than that. So why Nexus? It's simple. It'll get you to focus on what's most important. And then based on your context, you will add additional pieces to it to help you solve the problems that are unique to your context.
And when you are scaling, what should be the thing that you keep an eye on? Of course, naturally, as you scale and want to deliver more, you should track whether or not you're actually capable of delivering more value with the framework that you have chosen. But probably for the first several sprints, if we're speaking about Nexus or any framework, it could be challenging for you to make 100 people work together. While previously you had 20 or 10 or I don't know how many working separately. So it's somehow a challenge to make number of teams squeeze out one cohesive integrated product that is working and indeed done. But except of value being delivered, what should you as an organization look out for and which metrics are useful to be tracked during this scaling process to maybe highlight that something is not going quite right or you need some adjustments along the way?
That's a great question. Um, Evidence-based management, documentation, some of the guidance there does talk about some really interesting sort of metrics you want to look at when you're trying to figure out how are we doing. And I like that you talked about value, delivering value. Value obviously can be a little bit fuzzy, but talking to your customers to see how happy they are with the progress that you're making over sprints is something that you should be looking at. How happy are your employees? You can't, there's a great quote, your customers can't be any happier than your employees are. If you've got unhappy employees, you're going to have unhappy customers. So keep an eye on how the satisfaction level of your employees as they're building whatever product you're looking at. You talked about deliverable increments. That's, for me, that is, I mean, that's right from the Agile Manifesto. The progress really should be measured in working software. If you can't, within a month, get your people working together to create something that is of enough value that your customers would actually want to interact with it, then that's a moment you should be pausing and saying, what are we doing wrong here? Where after a month, we can't produce anything of value that our customers actually want to interact with. I always challenge companies. It's like, well, you know, yeah, okay, we can't do it in a month. We need 3 months. I'm always challenging people. If you think things are going to get better just because you have more time to do it, that's often a fallacy. A month is a nice horizon for people. Do we have working software at the end of the month? Some of the other metrics that I like to get people to focus on is how quickly can you implement ideas and at what cost? This idea of cycle time, measuring how quickly it takes to go from, hey, we have this great idea that I think our customers are going to like, to validating that this idea was what our customers wanted and they liked it. The shorter that time frame, the more agile you're going to be. So looking at that turnaround time is really important. And then looking at some of your costs, right? At the end of the day, if you're a business, you should be looking to get a decent return on investment. So how much are we paying to get a change out the door? What is our overall revenue for the number of employees we have? One of the things I've always liked about working in a small company is often the revenue per employee is quite high because you just have less people. When you get to some of these larger organizations, the revenue per employee tends to go down because yes, you're making billions of dollars, but you've got tens of thousands of people to do that. That idea of, do we really need all these people working on this to provide value, and can we get away with less, is another question that organizations should be asking themselves. And I'm not suggesting, please don't use this as an opportunity to fire a whole bunch of people, right? That's certainly not what I'm suggesting. But organizations, I've never met an organization that their demand to deliver things is that you've got more supply than demand. You're always going to have more demand than supply. It's just a matter of putting people in the right spot. So I've got, 90 people working on this one thing. Maybe I can actually make really good progress on this one thing with only 30 people. Those other 60 people, there's other things in the organization they can be doing to provide value. Go find those things. And when you do find those things, how much value can you produce in a month? How quickly can you turn things around? What's your revenue that those people can do? Use those same metrics, but in smaller batches, smaller numbers.
Who is a person that has over 3 decades of experience in software development and a variety of aspects here, I can bet you have a funny story. And if that can be one somehow related to the exams that we have at scrum.org, I'd appreciate if you can share one of them.
Sure. I'm not, I guess your audience will decide whether this is funny or not, but it was very telling for me. So as I mentioned earlier, we partnered with members from the Kanban community to help create a class and an assessment to help introduce Kanban practices to Scrum teams and how Scrum teams would get the maximum benefit from Kanban. And so there's a PSK assessment, a professional Scrum with Kanban assessment. And we partnered with Daniel Vacanti and Yuval Garrett, and two awesome Kanban practitioners who helped us create the material and create the assessment. So there was a rather small group of people, a handful of people who helped create the initial PSK assessment. As part of getting that assessment done, we reached out to other people. They would provide some questions, and then it was myself and Yuval and Daniel who, in the end, kind of brought them all together, did some light editing, and decided which questions would go into the assessment and which questions wouldn't go in. And it was a really hard assessment, by the way. It is one that when I talk to other people, they really are happy when they pass because they feel really challenged when they take that. Of course, because we have to trial the assessment, so we have to take it. So we get all these questions together, we load them into our assessment tool that we have, and then we had to pass it. All three people who helped create the assessment, not one of us was able to get a perfect mark. And it was a little embarrassing that all three of us who helped write the questions or helped check them to make sure they were good, we should have seen every single question that went through. Not one of us got 100%. And I remember the first person who took it, and I think I took it and got like 93 something. And of course had the other two people going, oh, you obviously don't know this stuff. They went and took it and got similar marks as well. And it took a few months, I think, before someone actually got 100% on that assessment, which, considering I helped write the questions and the material, was a little embarrassing, but it's hard. And it was definitely a very challenging assessment. So if you take one of our assessments and you don't pass, don't feel so bad, because even people who helped write it don't always get 100% on it.